Chapter 1. A usual night gone wrong. The gas station stood at the edge of town, where the road stretched into endless fields of soybeans and corn. The fluorescent lights flickered slightly, casting a bluish glow over the cracked pavement. It was just another night shift for the small crew working at the station, each lost in their routine, unaware that before sunrise, everything would change. The crew. Ethan had worked at the station the longest. He was a broad-shouldered man in his late 30s, with calloused hands and a deep voice that carried authority. He had seen it all: drunk drivers, shoplifters, even the occasional runaway looking for a ride out of town. Then there was Lucas, the fresh out of high school kid who still hadn't decided what to do with his life. He had a tendency to daydream, often missing details, but his heart was in the right place. Beatriz, or Bea as everyone called her, was the sharp-tongued cashier who knew every regular customer by name. She had a knack for keeping things in order and didn't tolerate nonsense. Lastly, there was Miguel, the quiet mechanic who fixed everything from coffee machines to truck engines, preferring grease and tools over conversation. Tonight felt like any other. The same truck drivers filling their tanks, the same smell of gasoline and coffee lingering in the air. But then, Lucas ran into the station, eyes wide with panic. The incident. "Guys, we have a problem," Lucas gasped, out of breath. He wiped his sweaty palms on his uniform. Ethan barely looked up from the register. "What did you do this time, kid?" It's bad." Lucas swallowed hard. "I accidentally." He hesitated, looking at Bea and Miguel for help. Miguel raised an eyebrow, waiting. "Spit it out," Bea demanded, crossing her arms. Lucas took a deep breath. "I think I filled the wrong tank." Silence. Then Ethan's brow furrowed. "What do you mean, wrong tank?" Lucas licked his lips nervously. "The underground diesel tank. I think I put gasoline in it." The weight of his words dropped like a stone. The underground tanks supplied the pumps. If he had mixed the wrong fuel, every truck that filled up tonight would be at risk of breaking down. The damage could be catastrophic. Ethan shot up from his chair. "You think, or you know?" Lucas shrank under Ethan's glare. I'm pretty sure." Bea let out a curse under her breath. Miguel rubbed his temples. Ethan grabbed his keys. "All right, no panic. We checked the tanks first. If you really screwed this up, we need to act fast." The investigation. The four of them hurried outside. The night was quiet except for the distant hum of crickets. Ethan unlocked the storage panel near the pumps, revealing a series of gauges and pipes leading into the underground tanks. He flicked on a flashlight and checked the readings. His face darkened. "It's mixed," he muttered. "Lucas, you just turned half our diesel supply into a useless mess." Lucas's stomach twisted. "What do we do?" Ethan exhaled sharply. "If a trucker fills up now, his engine will seize within miles. We have to stop every diesel customer before they pump." Bea was already moving, heading inside to shut down the diesel pumps. "What about the ones who already filled up?" she called over her shoulder. Ethan cursed under his breath. "Miguel, get the emergency contact list. We need to call every truck that was here in the last hour." Lucas clenched his fists. I'll help however I can." Ethan shot him a hard look. "You've done enough. Just stay out of the way." Lucas's chest tightened. He had messed up big time, but deep down he knew he had to make it right. As the team scrambled, a pair of headlights appeared in the distance, rolling toward the station. A massive 18-wheeler rumbled onto the lot, heading straight for the diesel pump. Lucas felt a surge of determination. This one, at least he could stop. And he ran. Chapter 2, Racing Against Time. Lucas sprinted toward the truck, waving his arms frantically. The driver, a burly man in a flannel shirt, frowned and rolled down his window just as he reached the door. "Kid, what the hell are you doing?" the trucker barked. "Sir, you can't pump here. There's been a mistake with the fuel." Lucas panted, hands on his knees. The trucker narrowed his eyes. "What kind of mistake?" Ethan and Miguel ran up behind Lucas. Ethan took over. "Bad mix in the underground tanks. We're shutting down the diesel pumps." The trucker muttered a curse under his breath, gripping the steering wheel. "Damn, I just filled up 10 minutes ago. Ethan's face paled. We need to check your engine. If gas got into your system, you could break down on the highway. The trucker hesitated but eventually popped the hood. Miguel grabbed his tools and got to work, examining the engine. Meanwhile, Bia was inside, calling every trucker who had stopped earlier. Lucas watched Miguel intently. The mechanic's face remained unreadable as he checked fuel lines. Finally, Miguel exhaled. You might be okay, but we need to drain your tank and refill it. The trucker cursed again. That's gonna cost a fortune. Ethan ran a hand over his face. We'll cover it. Our mistake. Lucas swallowed hard. This was his fault. He had to make it right. Bia rushed back outside, her face tense. 2 truckers already answered. One's still nearby, the other is on the highway heading south. Ethan grabbed the station's old radio. Try to get the southbound trucker on CB. Maybe someone can warn him before he breaks down. Miguel finished draining the first truck's fuel, wiping sweat from his forehead. 1 down. But we might have a bigger problem. Lucas's stomach dropped. What now? Miguel pointed at the road. If that trucker already on the highway stalls, he could cause an accident. We need to find him fast. Ethan nodded. Lucas, you messed this up, but you want to fix it? Get in the truck. We're going after him. Lucas blinked. Wait, you want me to come? Ethan threw him the keys to the station's pickup. Yeah, you screwed up big, kid. Time to see if you can fix it. Lucas hesitated only a second before gripping the keys tightly. This was his shot to make things right. The pickup roared to life as they sped down the highway, taillights vanishing into the darkness, chasing the truck before it was too late. Chapter 3, The Chase. The station's old pickup roared down the highway, headlights cutting through the night. Lucas gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. Ethan sat beside him, checking the radio frequency, his expression tense. Truck 193. This is the gas station off Highway 12. Do you copy? Ethan spoke into the CB radio. Static hissed in response. He tried again. Truck 193. We have an emergency regarding your last fuel stop. You need to pull over immediately. Nothing. Lucas swallowed hard. What if he doesn't have his radio on? Ethan exhaled through his nose, frustration evident. Then we catch him before his engine stalls. Miguel's voice crackled through the radio from the station. Bia called highway patrol, but they don't have a unit close enough. It's on us. Lucas pressed the gas pedal harder. Trees blurred past. He could feel the sweat forming on his palms despite the cool night air seeping through the cracked window. Eyes on the road, kid, Ethan warned. Then, in the distance, taillights. A massive 18-wheeler rumbled along the highway, its bulk taking up most of the right lane. That's him, Ethan confirmed, squinting. Get up alongside. Lucas changed lanes, heart hammering as they drew closer. He honked twice. No reaction. We need him to stop, Lucas said, voice tight. Ethan rolled down the window and leaned out, waving an arm. The trucker finally glanced in his side mirror but didn't slow down. Damn it, Ethan muttered. He grabbed the radio again. Truck 193. This is urgent. Your fuel may be compromised. You need to pull over now. Lucas watched as the trucker seemed to hesitate. Then disaster. The 18-wheeler's engine coughed, sputtered. The truck jerked. Brake lights flared red as the vehicle lurched, swerving slightly. He's stalling out, Ethan said. Pull ahead of him. Give him room. Lucas reacted instantly, easing into the left lane and slowing down as the truck drifted to the shoulder. The moment it stopped, Lucas pulled over in front of it. Ethan was already out of the truck before the engine had fully died. The trucker, a middle-aged man with a salt and pepper beard, jumped down from his cab. What the hell is going on? He barked. Ethan approached, hands raised. Sir, we believe your fuel was contaminated at our station. If you keep driving, your engine could seize up completely. The trucker ran a hand down his face. You serious? Lucas stepped forward. We've already had one truck drained and refilled. We can help. The man gritted his teeth. Damn it. I knew something felt off when I filled up. Thought maybe it was just a bad batch. Miguel's voice came through the radio. "Tell him not to start it again. We'll bring the tools." Ethan nodded. "Can you wait here? We'll send our mechanic out." The trucker sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Not like I got much choice, do I?" Lucas exhaled, tension easing slightly. They had stopped the worst-case scenario, but they weren't done yet. As Ethan radioed back to the station, Lucas glanced up at the sky. The night wasn't over, but for the first time he felt like he was doing something right. And he wasn't going to stop until they fixed every last mistake. Chapter 4: The Fallout. The cold night air settled over the highway as Lucas leaned against the pickup, arms crossed, watching Ethan pace. The 18-wheeler loomed over them, its engine now silent, the smell of burnt fuel lingering faintly. The trucker, still visibly frustrated, muttered under his breath while checking his phone. "How long until your guy gets here?" he grumbled, glancing at Ethan. "Miguel's already on his way," Ethan replied, eyes scanning the dark road. "Shouldn't be more than 15 minutes. Lucas kicked at a loose pebble on the asphalt, his nerves still on edge. He had caused this mess, but at least they had managed to stop a disaster. Now came the hard part: fixing it. The trucker shook his head. "You boys are lucky I didn't make it further down the road. If this had happened in the mountains, I'd be stranded for hours." Lucas cleared his throat. I know. I'm really sorry. The man held up a hand. "Save it, kid. I just want my truck running again." Ethan shot Lucas a look that said, "Let me handle this," and turned back to the trucker. "We'll cover the costs. Whatever it takes to get you back on the road." The trucker sighed. "Fine. But you better believe I'm telling every driver I know about this." Lucas swallowed hard. Reputation was everything in a small town, and bad news traveled fast. If truckers started avoiding the station, it could mean serious trouble for business. The sound of an approaching engine broke the tense silence. Headlights bounced off the asphalt as Miguel's van pulled up beside them. He climbed out, toolbox in hand, and surveyed the situation with his usual calm demeanor. "All right," he said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Let's see how bad this is." The trucker popped the hood, stepping back as Miguel got to work. He moved with practiced efficiency, checking fuel lines, inspecting the engine for damage. Lucas watched intently, hoping against hope that the contamination hadn't done anything permanent. Minutes passed in silence, the occasional clang of tools and Miguel's quiet muttering the only sounds. Finally, he straightened, rubbing his chin. "You got lucky," Miguel said. "The contamination didn't reach deep into the system yet. But we need to drain it completely before you start this thing again." The trucker let out a relieved breath. "Well, that's something." Miguel set to work, carefully siphoning the bad fuel while Lucas assisted, holding the equipment steady. Despite his earlier mistakes, he was determined to be useful. Ethan, arms crossed, kept an eye on the road, his usual watchful self. The trucker pulled out his phone and started typing. "What are you doing?" Lucas asked hesitantly. "Letting my company know what happened," he replied. "And giving them your station's number." Lucas's stomach dropped. "Is that bad?" The trucker chuckled dryly. "Depends. Could mean they blacklist your pumps, or it could mean they expect you to cover the costs." Ethan exhaled sharply. "We'll deal with it. One problem at a time." Miguel finished draining the fuel and stepped back, wiping sweat from his forehead. "All right. That should do it. Now we just need fresh diesel." Lucas's heart pounded. "I'll go back and get some." Ethan looked at him for a long moment before nodding. "Take the pickup. Be quick." Lucas didn't need to be told twice. He jumped into the truck, fired up the engine, and peeled back onto the highway. As the lights of the gas station came into view, he felt a mix of determination and guilt. He had messed up badly, but he was going to fix this no matter what it took. Little did he know the real fallout was yet to come. Chapter 5: Unraveling Consequences. Lucas gripped the steering wheel tightly as he sped back toward the gas station. His pulse pounded in his ears, matching the rhythmic hum of the tires against the asphalt. He replayed the trucker's words over and over. Blacklisted, reputation, consequences. The weight of his mistake felt heavier with each mile. When he pulled into the station, the fluorescent lights overhead buzzed faintly, casting long shadows across the empty lot. Bia was already outside, pacing near the fuel tanks. She spun around as Lucas climbed out of the truck. "Did you stop him?" she asked, her voice edged with urgency. Lucas nodded. "Yeah, barely." Relief flashed across her face but disappeared just as quickly. Miguel called ahead. He drained the contaminated fuel, but now we need fresh diesel. "I'll load it up," Lucas said, moving toward the storage tanks. His hands trembled slightly as he unlocked the hatch. The station's backup supply wasn't much, but it would be enough to get the trucker moving again. As he worked, he felt Bia's gaze on him. "You all right?" she asked. Lucas sighed. "Not really. If word gets out about this, we could lose customers. Maybe even shut down." Bia frowned but didn't argue. Instead, she grabbed a clipboard from a nearby shelf. "We need to be sure this doesn't happen again. Miguel and I checked the storage tanks while you were gone. Everything looks fine. That means the contamination had to come from the pump itself." Lucas hesitated. "You think someone tampered with it?" She nodded. "It's possible. If it was just a bad batch of fuel, we'd have more cases by now." A shiver ran down Lucas's spine. The idea that someone might have deliberately sabotaged the station hadn't crossed his mind. He exchanged a worried glance with Bia before turning back to his task. Once the fresh diesel was secured, he climbed back into the truck. Bia leaned against the open window. "Be careful out there," she warned, "and keep an eye out for anything suspicious." Lucas nodded, the unease settling in his chest like a stone. As he drove back to the stranded truck, the road ahead seemed darker than before, and for the first time that night, he realized the real mystery was only beginning. The drive back to the truck felt longer than before, each mile stretching with the weight of his thoughts. The quiet road, usually peaceful, now felt eerie under the dim glow of the headlights. Every shadow along the tree line seemed to shift, making Lucas grip the wheel tighter. He forced himself to focus, but the idea that someone might have sabotaged the station gnawed at him. His phone buzzed on the passenger seat. A quick glance told him it was Ethan. He picked up, keeping his eyes on the road. "Yeah," Lucas answered. "How close are you?" Ethan's voice was low, serious. 5 minutes out." "What's up?" Ethan hesitated. "The trucker's getting impatient, and Miguel says we need to be extra careful refueling. If there's any more contamination, this whole thing gets worse." Lucas exhaled sharply. "I'll be there soon." As he approached the site, he saw the glow of hazard lights up ahead. Pulling to a stop, he spotted Ethan talking to the trucker, who looked even more agitated than before. Miguel was near the engine, double-checking his work. Lucas hopped out, unloading the fresh diesel. "We're good to go," he announced, trying to sound more confident than he felt. Miguel nodded and began the careful process of refueling. The trucker crossed his arms, watching closely. "This better work," he muttered. Lucas stood back, stealing a glance at Ethan. He lowered his voice. "Bia thinks someone might have messed with the pump on purpose." Ethan's jaw tensed. "You serious?" Lucas nodded. "She said the storage tanks were fine. That means the problem started at the pump." Ethan was quiet for a moment, then looked around the darkened roadside. "We'll deal with that later. Right now, let's just get this guy moving." Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as Miguel finished. He stepped back, wiping his hands. "All right, try it now." The trucker climbed into the cab, turned the key, and the engine rumbled to life. A wave of relief washed over Lucas, but it was short-lived. The trucker leaned out the window. "Next time, double-check your fuel, kid. This almost cost me my job." Lucas swallowed hard and nodded. "It won't happen again." As the truck roared away, kicking up dust in its wake, Lucas turned to Ethan. "Now what?" Ethan's expression was unreadable. "Now, we find out who did this." Lucas shivered despite the warm night air. Fixing the truck was one thing. Unraveling this mystery, that was something else entirely. Chapter 6. Shadows in the Dark. The gas station felt different when Lucas and Ethan returned. The usual hum of the night, the distant croak of frogs, the rustling of wind through the trees, felt muted, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Bia was waiting near the pumps, arms crossed, foot tapping impatiently against the concrete. Miguel stood a few feet away, inspecting the hoses with a flashlight. "Well?" Bia asked as soon as Lucas stepped out of the truck. "The truck's moving again," Lucas replied, rubbing his hands over his face. But the driver was furious. "If he reports this to his company, we're in trouble." Ethan locked the truck door and looked toward Miguel. "Did you find anything?" Miguel flicked his light off and shook his head. "Nothing obvious. But something's not right. I checked the seals, the hoses, the filters, everything looks fine. If someone tampered with the fuel, they knew exactly what they were doing." Lucas felt his stomach twist. "So, we're looking for someone who knows their way around this place?" Bia nodded. "That narrows it down, but not by much. Could be someone who works here, or someone who used to." Silence fell over the group. The idea that one of their own might have done this sent a chill through Lucas. He glanced around at the empty lot, the flickering light above the office door casting long, eerie shadows. "We need to check the security footage," Ethan said. "If someone messed with the pump, they had to be here long enough to do it." Bia was already moving toward the office. "I'll pull it up." Lucas, Ethan, and Miguel followed her inside. The small office smelled of stale coffee and motor oil. Bia sat at the desk and clicked through the grainy black and white footage from the security cameras. Hours passed in moments as she skimmed through the past 2 days. There, Miguel pointed at the screen. The timestamp read 2:47 a.m. A hooded figure moved near pump 3, crouching down and doing something near the nozzle. The camera quality wasn't good enough to catch a face, but their movements were deliberate. "Can you rewind?" Lucas asked. Bia did, slowing it down. The figure wasn't in a hurry, which meant they weren't afraid of being seen. That sent a fresh wave of unease through Lucas. Whoever did this felt comfortable enough to take their time. "That's not just some random vandal," Ethan muttered. "They knew exactly what they were doing." Lucas clenched his jaw. "We need to find out who it is." Bia copied the footage onto a USB drive. "I can enhance it on my laptop at home. Maybe get a clearer look at their face." Miguel stood up and stretched. "And what do we do until then? Just sit around and wait for them to strike again?" "No," Lucas said, a determined edge in his voice. "We keep watch. Whoever did this might come back." Outside, the night stretched on, thick with tension. The gas station, once a place of routine and familiarity, now felt like a crime scene. And as Lucas stood by the pumps, scanning the darkness, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone, somewhere, was watching them too. Chapter 7: The Watchful Eyes. The night felt colder than usual as Lucas stood by the pumps, his breath forming clouds in the air. The gas station, bathed in the pale glow of the flickering lights, seemed different. The usual quiet hum of the place, the occasional hum of a car driving past, the rustle of the wind through the trees, had been replaced by an oppressive stillness, as though the very air was holding its breath. Lucas glanced toward the darkened woods that bordered the station. Every shadow there felt like it was hiding something, or worse, someone. Ethan and Bia were inside, hunched over Bia's laptop, trying to enhance the security footage. The room was dim, lit only by the glow of the screen. The hum of the air conditioner did little to break the silence between them. Miguel had gone out to check the perimeter one more time. They hadn't found anything new, but it didn't stop the feeling that they were on the edge of something big. "Do you think it's someone we know?" Bia had asked earlier, her voice tight with suspicion. Lucas had been thinking the same thing. The idea that one of their own might be involved in something like this was enough to make his stomach churn. "I don't know anymore," Lucas replied, running his fingers through his hair. "Whoever did this knows how this place works. They didn't leave a single trace behind." Lucas' eyes kept flicking back to the woods, drawn to the darkness. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that they were no longer the only ones at the gas station. As he stood there, the hairs on the back of his neck prickled. The uneasy feeling deepened with every passing second. He was about to turn back inside when his phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a message from Miguel. "There's something strange by the storage shed. Come check it out." His heart raced. He quickly tapped a reply, "On my way." He tucked the phone back into his jacket pocket, his thoughts already racing. Was this another trap? Or had they finally found something concrete? "We need to check something," Lucas said to Ethan and Bia, his voice low but urgent. They followed him out into the cold night, the gravel crunching under their boots. The air felt heavier now, the chill of the night pressing in from all sides. Lucas' footsteps quickened as they neared the storage shed at the edge of the lot. Miguel was standing by the large metal container, his flashlight sweeping over the ground. He was motionless, as if he were waiting for them to arrive. "What is it?" Ethan asked, his voice tense with the anticipation of what they might find. Miguel motioned for them to come closer. "Look at this." Lucas stepped forward, his breath coming in shallow bursts, the wind carrying a faint scent of motor oil. Miguel's flashlight shone on the ground at the base of the storage shed. There, partially buried in the dirt, were tire tracks. But not just any tire tracks. These were fresh. The edges were sharp, the grooves still deep. Someone had driven through here very recently. Whoever made these tracks wasn't just passing through, Lucas muttered, crouching to get a better look. He ran his fingers along the dirt, tracing the lines of the tracks. They were trying to cover their tracks. Bia stepped forward, eyes narrowing at the sight. What if it's not someone who works here at all? What if they're trying to mislead us? Make us think it's someone else? Lucas stood up, his mind racing. "It's a possibility," he said, his voice dark. "But whoever's doing this knows exactly how to play us. Whoever it is, they're making sure we second-guess everything." The wind rustled the trees again, and the cold seemed to settle deeper in their bones. The gas station, which had once been so familiar, now felt like an alien place, one full of secrets and dark corners. "We need to stay sharp," Lucas added. "I don't care who it is. Just don't trust anything until we have the full picture." As the group stood there, the air thick with tension, no one said anything. They just stared at the tire tracks, each of them wondering if they were being led into a trap or if they were finally closing in on the truth. Either way, they weren't going to rest until they had answer. Chapter 8. The veil lifts. Hours passed in a blur, each moment stretching on longer than the last. Lucas and his team had scoured every inch of the gas station, retracing their steps over and over again. They checked the pumps, the office, the storage areas, and every dark corner. But it was as though the shadowy figure was always one step ahead. Nothing concrete had surfaced. It was maddening. Back in the small office, Bia was hunched over her laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard as she tried to enhance the security footage further. The faint hum of the air conditioner filled the otherwise silent room. Lucas and Ethan sat on opposite sides of the desk, eyes glued to the screen as Bia worked her magic. Miguel paced the room, restless. "I think I've got something," Bia said suddenly, her voice breaking through the quiet tension. Lucas leaned forward, his heart pounding in his chest. "Show us." Bia clicked a few more buttons, zooming in on the footage they had recovered from the security cameras. The image on the screen was grainy and unclear, but as Bia worked, the figure in the footage began to come into sharper focus. It was still a blurry outline, but it was something. "There," Bia said, slowing the playback. They all leaned in closer, watching as the hooded figure moved near pump 3, crouching down and manipulating something near the nozzle. Ethan frowned, his lips pressing into a thin line. They weren't in a rush. Whoever this is, they were careful. Lucas felt the unease spread through him again. The figure didn't move quickly. There was no sign of panic or urgency. Whoever they were, they felt at home here. They knew they wouldn't be caught. Miguel crossed his arms, studying the screen. This isn't random. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. Bia's fingers hovered over the mouse as she tried to enhance the footage even more. "Let me try slowing it down further. We might get a clearer view of their face." Lucas took a step back, pacing around the cramped office. The weight of the situation was heavy on his chest. Whoever this was, they were playing a game. A game he wasn't sure they could win. But they couldn't give up now. They were too close. After what felt like an eternity, Bia froze the footage on a frame that showed the figure's gloved hands in more detail. The gloves were pristine, too clean for someone who had just been around gasoline and dirt. Lucas' mind raced. Whoever this was had been careful, meticulous even. Someone who doesn't want to leave a trace, Lucas muttered, his voice barely a whisper. Bia frowned as she continued her work. Something's not right. There's something else here. I'm gonna zoom in on the gloves. Before she could do more, a sharp knock echoed through the office door, making them all jump in unison. The knock came again, louder, more insistent. Who is it? Lucas called, his voice betraying his nervousness. No answer. Just the knock again, as if the person outside were testing their resolve. Ethan stood up, eyes darting toward the door. Should we answer? The knock came once more. Whoever it was wasn't waiting for an invitation. On 3, Lucas said, his mind racing. 1, 2. Before he could finish, Ethan reached for the door handle and swung it open. Standing there in the doorway was a figure cloaked in a dark coat, their face hidden in the shadows. They didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there, watching them with an unnerving stillness. Who are you? Lucas demanded, his voice sharp with tension. The figure didn't respond. Instead, they reached into their coat, pulling out a small, folded piece of paper. With deliberate slowness, they extended it toward Lucas. He hesitated, his heart pounding, before taking the paper. The weight of it felt strange in his hand, as if it carried more than just words. Unfolding it, Lucas scanned the message written in neat, precise handwriting. You're closer than you think. The cold feeling in his chest deepened. It wasn't just a warning, it was a challenge. Before Lucas could react, the figure turned and walked away, disappearing into the night. The door clicked shut behind them, leaving the room in an uneasy silence. Lucas stood frozen for a moment, staring at the paper in his hand. They had been watched, and they were being led somewhere closer to the truth but also closer to danger. This was no longer just a mystery, it was a game of cat and mouse, and whoever was behind this wasn't playing fair.